We're here today with Daniel Rama. We're here at Vikasa in Samui in Thailand. So welcome. Rama's one of the biggest yogis at the moment. Would you agree with that?
I don't know that I'd refer to myself as such, but I do what I can.
Yeah, I think you've garnered quite a big following on social media, especially as a male yogi. I think you're pretty big at the moment. I think maybe let's backtrack a little bit. Tell us how you got into yoga, and I think it's kind of you had a fitness accident that kind of led you to.
I did. I'll give you the more inside scoop because I've told the story many times.
Yes, I'm sure you've told us a million times.
Most of the time I don't say that I was actually drinking during this incident and I was wanting to impress a girl. So I decided to do a heavy overhead lift pattern and ended up wobbling at the top and dropping lots of heavy weight down on top of my left foot. And I did not get rushed to the hospital. Instead, I put on a tight-fitting shoe and actually went out dancing for the rest of that night.
Oh, wow.
When I woke up, my foot was huge, massive, swollen. And the diagnosis was that I'd shattered all 5 metatarsals, a few other bones comprising the foot and ankle, and doctors told me I wouldn't be able to run again.
Okay.
For me, I was studying to become a personal trainer. A lot of my life formed around having the ability to demonstrate functional movement patterns to people. So it sucked. For a long time, I was quite depressed. But
what's a long time? Like months, years?
Months. I actually managed to recover fully within a 12-month period.
Okay.
The reason that things happen so fast, physio was something that I explored a little bit, as well as a few other holistic practices, like things like Reiki, for example.
You study kinesiology, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So having that background was certainly something that contributed to my healing. But around the same time in my life, I was completely alone.
Yeah.
No friends, new city. I also had my license taken away, so no way of really doing anything. And just my passion, my hobby became, can I fix my body? And I lived 24 hours a day, proper breathing, proper exercise, proper diet, positive thinking, meditation. That was just my life. So as I adopted it, I managed to heal quite quickly. And that was my introduction to yoga.
And so when did you go to the ashram then?
Ashram was just slightly after.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had this healing experience through yoga, namely because of my father. He actually went to the ashram before I did.
Okay.
And when he came home, he was vastly different.
Okay.
More steady and inert. I used to love making him mad, and I could not make him mad anymore. So I got quite curious.
Yeah.
Asking him some questions. While I was injured, he was the first one that started to teach me about certain yogic techniques.
Okay.
From postures to visualization to pranayama.
So your dad's a yogi?
He is.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Not for his whole life, but through some of his own life circumstance, adopted it later on when I needed it most, coincidentally.
Cool. Wow, and then you went to the ashram for how many years?
Well, I only wanted to do a 28-day teacher training and managed to...
You kind of ended up
the thing was,
for a few years or something.
I learned so much wonderful knowledge, and I felt that if I would leave this place right now, that information might not stick.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I decided I would
smart.
stay in this place where your hand is being held and you can apply all of the techniques.
So at what point did you feel like, okay, now I'm ready to go outside and face the world and possibly create change in the world as well?
I think when I started to hear many, many things being repeated, because the schedule would kind of cycle year after year. And at some stage, I felt like I would not be able to grow anymore in that place. And it's now my mission to maintain a similar lifestyle outside the ashram. Because inside it's like, here, this is what you do every day. It's simple.
It's simple,
But outside, it has to be
with all the triggers
on me.
outside.
Yes.
Yeah, and
so
still
can you do that?
Maintaining
Correct.
this balance. Which brings me to a topic, yoga off the mat. We always, it's a term. We always talk about this. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's kind of a bit of a confusion with the phrase itself, because the yoga we do on the mat, the yoga we do off the mat, there is no separation. They are one and the same. And so it's kind of just yoga, anything which allows you to improve the quality of body, mind, and beyond. That could happen on a yoga mat. That could happen while you're walking down the street or doing dishes or really any activity that allows you to truly focus and see maybe yourself as something separate from this body and mind. When you can see a little bit of separation, the little things of life tend to bother one less. And I say little things, but...
And so is that something that you teach in your classes?
Yeah, the nice thing about yoga is that the philosophy is something you arrive at based on doing the practices. So yes, it's something that we teach, and we do teach it directly, but more so an individual will just hear that as story, hear that as words. It's not until you embody the practices in an ongoing basis that it clicks, and you're like, oh, that's what we've been talking about in philosophy for the last 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's something that only arises through personal experience.
Through personal experience, interesting. And on your Instagram, I mean, you do a lot of practical, let's say, teachings. You know, like you show people how certain postures are done, certain asanas are done. How do you kind of weave? How do you fuse that with sort of the philosophy that you teach?
Well, social media will always be a look at the superficial. It's how it's designed.
Handstands,
kind of advanced, put the foot behind your head, all of these flexibility skills. It's not necessarily the things that I teach in the programs. Yeah, there is, of course, some of that, but more so those flashy feats are the hook.
Got it.
Get somebody's foot in the door.
So that's how you hook them in.
A little bit.
And then you kind of teach them about life.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I hear you. That's a good tactic.
Well, both, because I mean, the physical practice is a stepping stone. So even if your goal is to develop proficiency with a handstand, along the way you'll learn many lessons that you can apply elsewhere. So even though I sometimes bash just the physical postures, saying that they're empty, they're just fancy, whatever, they lead you somewhere. They offer lessons
for people.
Correct.
Yeah, got it. What would you say is the best thing about yoga? Why do you love yoga?
Well, I mean, satsang is a Sanskrit word that relates to good company, or the company of truth. And yoga's ability to transcend language, culture, to connect individuals who are of like mind, for me is very special, namely because I have led a lifestyle which tends to be extremely solitary for the most part. And that is where I personally grow, but I also need some comfort that I find through good company.
Yeah, good company, community. Yeah. And what's the worst thing about yoga? What would you like to change about yoga? Is there something that you feel like, you know, like if this was different, like, or if you could change it, what would that be?
Well, just when you say worst, right, like a lot of the worst moments in my life turned out to be the thing I needed most. And through that lens, there's nothing that's necessarily worst, bad.
Gotcha.
But there is a lot of comparison. Especially with the advent of social media being so popular, people compare.
Yeah, true.
And this develops all sorts of internal issues. But in my experience, the things that make us suffer, if we can reframe, also tend to be the thing that brings us our salvation. So it's not to say that's the worst part. It's just that's a trigger for people. That's a thing to work through. In a way, it's a gift, but also the worst.
And so, I mean, you're known, people follow you and kind of adore you for the fact that you're so authentic. I read that on many. I was going through your comments and as I was doing the research, and I think you have this unique ability to kind of sort of fuse the sort of traditional yogic teachings with modern day movement, philosophy, and still staying really authentic at the same time. How do you manage that? How do you do that?
I think that it's the natural byproduct of my past experiences. Studying this more clinical anatomy and physiology, and then moving to this ashram where they didn't necessarily know the nitty-gritty details of human anatomy, but they understood the mind, they understood emotions, they understood this energetic system that allows our physical body to be the way that it is. So because of my past experience and the ability to fuse ancient with new. This, I think, is the authenticity that you're talking about, this fusion.
Yeah.
And that's
very unique. Yeah, it's a gift.
Sure, but yeah, I mean, if there were other people who had the same past experiences as me, I don't think it would be far-fetched in any way, shape, or form. So it's relatively passive from my point.
What's the thing that you're most proud of?
Well, I mean, we spoke about this before, of course.
Earlier, yeah.
So my answer to that would be I am most proud of being proud of nothing.
Being proud of nothing.
Yeah.
But is that just you being humble, basically?
No, I mean humility is
you have a
something that
huge
does require
following
a
and
little effort. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's also something that you get better just by doing. It might start out as faking it until you become it. But then at some point you become it. I think that's probably what I did, yeah. Maybe at some point I was more full of myself.
Okay.
Yeah. But at some stage I realized that it's not me that people like. It's the techniques, actually. Like I am just a vessel, a vehicle for information to come down.
But I think people also like your personality. They like your authenticity. So it's not just...
But if I was prideful, I highly doubt they would feel the same.
What are you currently working on? What are you up to? What are your plans?
Many things.
Many things.
Where to start?
Okay.
For the last 10 years, I've been traveling all around the world, retreats, workshops, teacher trainings.
It's just to repeat, so you're stationed here in Thailand, kind of?
These days, now. That's one of the big exciting things for me, is it used to be a lot of effort communicating with venues and organizing programs in other parts of the world. Now I have Vikasa. I have my base, my place where I run all of my retreats, intensives, teacher trainings. All of my long programs are here. And like I'm very familiar with the environments. I know where I need to go for my waterfall adventures and these kinds of things.
Okay.
Yeah, I need a little bit of that in my life, but I'm finally having my feet on more solid ground while still being able to travel out and teach international workshops. So usually a couple times each month or every other month. I've been focusing a lot on Southeast Asia. Next year I'll do some workshops in Europe. Australia I also have coming up. Europe, I've got invitations for Zurich. Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of different places where I'll coordinate for 2025.
Nice. And your most popular workshop or retreat is the balance workshop, is that correct?
Yeah,
or I mean, one of your
they're kind of tiered offerings. So my balance retreats are an all levels offering. I just finished one and I'm still on this
that was like
kind of high.
Hours.
No, the balance retreat is 7 days, 7 days long. It's an all levels program. There were a few people came in who'd never done handstands or hand balances.
Wow.
And the look on their face and inside their soul when they could apply the things I'm talking about and feel like moments balancing on their hands. For me, serving up those aha moments is the stuff.
Okay. That's really satisfying.
Yeah.
That's when you feel like my purpose in life.
Yeah, for sure. That's the work that fuels my heart and soul, you know? And there are normally between 30 and 15 participants. I run them twice, maybe 3 times each year.
Okay.
The 300-hour programs that I run are normally more like 60 people. My 300-hour programs, they tend to be a little bit larger, somewhere in the market of 60 participants, 5 weeks, something that people are only eligible to do after taking a 200-hour yoga teacher training. And this is all really about developing your skills as a teacher and as a practitioner. And those programs have the potential for information to spiderweb. What I mean by that is in balance, people normally come for themselves, to just ground find their version of balance. 300-hour, people are wanting to be teachers. They want to go out and let this information spread. So I love that. You teach one person, that's one person, great. But you teach someone who's going to share, prefer. And then my intensive is the in-between. It's a 2-week program. We focus on physical development primarily, handstands, hand balances, flexibility skills. This seems to be my niche, my demographic. People come to learn physical things, and then we allude to the fact that in pursuit of these physical goals, you'll find they are inherently empty, and you'll start to crave something deeper. Or maybe you won't, and you'll just become a physical machine, which is still great. But my hope for my students is that a certain desire for depth begins to creep in.
You mentioned demographic because earlier we talked a little bit about your audience, and I was asking you if you kind of listen to your audience, you interact with your audience. So is this a good example of kind of you listening to what their needs are and then kind of creating a workshop or feedback or, I don't know, videos on social media for them?
Yeah, honestly, I wish that that wasn't part of how I do things, because every program that I run, like I have a template of things that I kind of am going to go into, but every single time I customize every little detail based on the people that are present. So it means I keep making new retreats every single time. It's felt by all of those in attendance. One of the number one pieces of feedback is, Rama, you really seem to know what we needed today. You know, and I love that, being able to not just copy and paste, but really produce for the person.
It means you're also tuning in to the group, to the people.
Yes.
That's good. And how about social media content?
How the same. I keep my ear out for comments, direct messages. I have a nice, neat little system of organization, so anything comes in.
So you do your own posts?
I do, yeah. Everything social media-wise has been, and likely will be me for the foreseeable future. Because again, that one-on-one, like me and you right now, sense is what I want for people who are interested in what I'm doing.
Is there something that you want to talk about that we haven't, I don't know, discussed yet?
I mean, in addition to my physical programs, I'm running my online studio as well, which started out because I travel so much. You know, I used to teach for a small number of individuals in Southern Ontario, a little outside Toronto. And then I had invitations to go teach in Indonesia and other parts of the world.
And you can't be everywhere.
What am I going to do with the people back home? So I created this online studio long ago, and there's been a few different renditions. Now there's enough classes inside to do a different practice every day for 6 months. So it's
every day?
Every day for 6 months, and then that's just the practice section. There's also a study where everything inside would essentially encompass the material that we make into a 300-hour training. So you could give yourself a self-guided 300-hour training with the Becoming Balanced Studio, for example. And that's been something I've put a lot of energy into lately.
What has been the best advice that you've ever been given?
Best advice?
Yes.
Best advice for me?
For you, yes.
For me
and that you probably now also teach?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are all different, and the bits of information that really clicked with me and for me, they might not hit with everyone else, but in leaving the ashram, the message that I was left with, a simple quote, something that we opened at the end of satsang, you know, almost like getting a message from the lineage of teachers I belong to, was richness comes to those who are simple and humble. And when you hear that phrase, it's like, richness. Richness? Yoga. It's kind of an oxymoron in a sense, and I did not take that to mean financial well-being, but rather
just abundance in general.
Abundance of a less physical nature, just a state of feeling rich in your life. Like the types of experiences that I'm collecting these days have nothing to do with financial well-being. I walk barefoot everywhere. I climb a rock wall behind my villa, you know, I swim in the ocean. This is what I love. This is my richness. And that has come to me through primarily simplicity.
And I guess in this sense, freedom could also mean richness, because not everybody's free to do what they desire.
Yeah, this is one of my main tattoos. This was actually in the ashram. I know it's so faded now. Freedom is always better. It's like nice cars are good, nice house is good.
The freedom is better.
Always better.
Cool. And we spoke a little bit about sort of staying humble. I mean, obviously now you're pretty big. You're people know who you are. I mean, you're laughing, but how has that been to kind of, let's say, deal with? I mean, because in this industry, I think a lot of teachers end up sort of, once they have a certain following, once they are famous, I think a lot of them get or sort of let down a path where their ego becomes a little bit inflated. Like, how do you cope with that? Like, how do you not become, how do I say? often teachers remain in sort of like an ivory tower where they're surrounded by people, yes-sayers, and who just sort of,
Well, first of all, it makes me feel a little bit weird.
Yeah,
so,
weird.
Yeah,
okay.
Like if somebody's putting me in an ivory tower up on a pedestal in some way, it's like, do you know who I was before yoga? Do you know how insane I actually am?
Okay.
Don't put me up there.
Okay.
Yeah? So I'm grateful, beyond grateful for the recognition, but I'm not expectant.
Okay.
Nor am I entitled to such ongoing love. By my conduct, all of that can drop off the face of the earth
really
very fast. I would think so. No,
Okay.
it's not just like a given. It's something that needs to be constantly and continually earned through effort and example.
Okay, and what if your students call you guru and sort of
I giggle like this and I shy away. You know what I mean? So it's not me that people actually like. It might look like that. It is the techniques that I teach and talk about. They are the thing that actually allows people to have a more potent experience of life, and then they say, oh, I learned this thing from this person, it must be this person. But it's not true at all. It's purely
you're
me
being a bit humble here, but I'm sure
seriously.
you have a, I think the way these teachings are presented, I think that plays a huge role in how people embrace the teachings.
No, it does, but like I am a product of my past teachers too, and nobody knows who they are.
Okay. And do you still have teachers now that you kind of look up to? Is that something, are there a few people that inspire you that you feel like, wow?
Yeah, I definitely have a few role models. I think it's actually one of the reasons why I love Vikasa. There's a lot of people who are doing similar things to myself. But like you asked me in 3 words how to describe myself, and one of those 3 words was amateur. I don't know anything. Like how I feel in my own skin is like I'm just this kid slowly moving through life and evolving.
Yeah.
So learning from people that are doing it now and doing it better, this is always going to be something that I look for. If you talk just like real role model teachers in my life, it tends to be honestly silence and stillness. Just listening, truly observing where you are, what you're doing, and it will pretty much always let you know.
Yeah. Yeah, if you have the patience and the clarity for it to come through.
Yeah, I think that we have a few different voices inside our head. At least I do. And there's one voice that is just so wise and always accurate. And there's another one that tends to argue with that. But I've gotten really good at listening to that wise voice.
And one last thing, you mentioned like role models. With a large following, maybe there comes a responsibility. Is that something that you feel you agree with that?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
I would like to be able always to do more with my presence online, but at the same time, there's a certain amount of staying in my lane and staying true to the things that I actually know how to do that I will stay committed to.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So for me, that's the elevation of body, mind, emotions, and energies through the sharing of yoga, movement, and mindfulness.
Okay.
That's what I know through my own personal experience. And so my responsibility is to stick to that, to share in that way.
Do you ever feel like you're being pushed into a direction that doesn't align with you, that doesn't resonate with you? Because I feel like, on social media, everybody kind of curates a profile and sort of curates a life that they want to portray. And a lot of people kind of get stuck in that process, and they end up, living a life that is not them. Is that something that you've experienced, or is that?
Well, the only shred of thought that I have within this subject is as it relates to relationships. To place a relationship online, as I have done in the past. People see that through their own personal experience, they gather their own ideas, formulate their own conclusions, and it tends to place a sort of strange pressure on the relationship. And so that's not a thing that I would do
would
anymore.
do again.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like I have this ratio for posting, just 7 to 1. 7 parts are supposed to be educational.
Okay.
2 parts
that's interesting.
inspirational.
Yeah.
1 part about me.
Okay.
And I still want to share about
yourself,
me and the things that are going on in my life, because that is what allows people to really resonate with me.
Relate
and when they come to a program, probably the number 1 piece of feedback is you're like pretty much exactly like we expected.
Okay.
Wearing ladies' tops with your nails painted and all this kind of stuff. You know, that's very much me. Mm-hmm. So I want to keep sharing that, but I think that there are some things that are just not made for
social media.
Correct.
Yeah.
At least not at this stage in my life.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Is there anything that you'd like to share with our audience to sort of close this?
I very much appreciate the chat, always. I think that for anybody listening to this, I am a great example of somebody who literally has no idea what they're doing with life. Literally no idea. Like, my story is very much a DIY trial through fire, if you will. There are a lot of leaps that I've wanted to take and have not. There are some big ones that I have taken, but likely only because I'm just super stubborn and go for it. And why I say this is to encourage other people to take those steps, even if it feels scary or whatever.
Jumping into
life is so short.
The unknown.
Yeah. Why not?
Would you say that that's kind of your main message to people? Like, what is your number 1? Like, if people need to take something away from this, what would you like them to take away?
I don't know why this book title just came to my head. I've never actually read it, but I think it's based on my life. Am I allowed to swear right now? Like, the book is called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And I'm pretty sure that is like my life to a T. It's just kind of like, fuck it, send it, go for it.
Just go for it.
Yeah.